Okay, this is being recorded. It's our final round of review. Um, Pretty much, I think you're gonna do great. You've learned everything I have, and most of you have been here for a few weeks already, so you've done all the review that you're gonna do. I want to tell you today what to focus on tonight and tomorrow morning if you're going to study a little bit more, what to bring to school tomorrow, what to expect from the exam, and how to do your best on the multiple choice, how to do your best on the free response, some general test taking strategy, and then we'll talk about the actual like moments of the exam. Um, mm, there's really not any good argument for using something that you didn't already write yourself. Um, the one exception might be if you've been studying like 50, 60 hours for this exam and you're just like up to here with apes. Maybe you could skim through other sources, but usually what happens is you introduce cross signals and confusion. It's harder to remember the stuff you've learned if you start learning new stuff at this point. There was definitely an argument to use outside sources 2, 3 weeks ago, but not tonight. At this point, the best thing for you is to reinforce things that you've already put into your brain with notes that you've already written. Um, you should know by now what your weakest topics are. So if you do really great on the multiple choice questions in your previous review of the water unit, you should not be studying more water unit. If your big weakness is the energy unit, then that's where you should spend most of your remaining time. I want to caution you that in my experience and my observation of other students, um, if you're going to use somebody else to study with, you got to make sure that you're actually focused on this topic. Um, it's rare that students help each other to study, very rare. Um, the type of studying that you have to do is depth of knowledge kind of studying. It is not memorizing words type of studying. If you see a word, you'll recognize it and you'll see it in context, and that'll be good enough. And you'll never have to generate a word. Like if you don't remember what it's called, you just describe it and you're fine. So you don't need to memorize things. Don't make flashcards. That was really good when you were in the 8th grade. That's not really relevant at this point. Um, I want to caution you that when you're studying and when you're answering questions, you'll want to strive for depth of knowledge and get beyond the really generic, easy answers. You'll never get credit for it's bad for the environment, it's unhealthy for humans. That is not an acceptable answer. If I were to just grab a random kid on the street and go, hey, kid, go take an environmental science exam, they would probably say, bad for the environment, because they kind of know environmental science is probably going to be the answer, right? What you're going to need to demonstrate on the exam is that you understand specifically how, with descriptive terminology, something's bad for the environment. You don't have to talk a lot, you just have to say something smart. So, something that I really recommend for my students is that you discuss a variable that could be measured. So it raises the chances of heart attack. Like you know the chances of you can calculate odds of a heart attack. And when somebody's exposed to smog, their chances of a heart attack go up, and you can actually measure those things. So that's a detailed answer. That's specific. If you just say like bad for human health or bad for you, that's just generic. You just sound like you're stabbing in the dark. You don't have knowledge. You just understand that there was a question about impact. So those safe shot answers that are like generic platitudes, they're never going to cut it. Um, One thing that I recommend is imagine that you're talking to a 2 year old, and perhaps you have experience that 2 year olds, in particular, at that age, it's appropriate, usually on the older end of two, on the way to 3 year old, for a child to ask you repeated why questions. So you say, I got to go to work. And they say, why? And you say, oh, because we need the money. And they say, why? And you say, well, it's very expensive to put my daughter through college and pay for my car insurance. And they say, why? And you're like, dang, okay, I guess because like inflation of costs and the changes in our economy and like, why? And it's like at some point you're like, dude, I like too many. Um, in this context, when you're answering questions on the AP test, you should imagine that there's a kid, 2 year old, asking you why questions. And so it's bad for the environment, and you say, why? And you say, well, because it makes fires worse. And the kid says, why? And you say, well, because there's an accumulation of fuels, which increases the intensity of the fire and at a higher temperature. And now you're actually talking about stuff you can measure. There would be variables for that: the intensity of a fire, the amount of minerals, sorry, the amount of organic compounds left in the soil. You could measure those things. So you want to keep digging until your answer is specific, is discussing a scientific variable you recognize from our class. Um, so when you review, if you're like looking at your notes in unit 4 about like wildfire intensity, you wouldn't just say to yourself like, oh, it's bad for the environment, I got this, and then you like go sleep. Like that's just too generic. Remind yourself when you're studying, like, do I remember the reasons? Do I know the answers to the why questions? And that's how you should be studying tonight. Look through your content, be specific. You only have a couple hours left awake, so let's move on. Um, there's really no workaround. It has to be the school issued iPad. It has to be fully charged. It has to be the newest operating system, and it has to have the Blue Book app. There's probably like 5 or 10 loaner iBooks somewhere on campus, but there's like 134 kids taking this test tomorrow. It's the second largest AP exam at Santa Barbara High School. So, yeah, you're definitely going to need your school iPad. Make sure it's charged. Put a post-it somewhere. If you're in your bedroom, lean over and plug it in right now. You'll definitely need something to write with. I know that the exam is on your iPad, but you'll want scratch paper. It's up to you whether you want to have a calculator. Um, if you're allowed to use a calculator, you'll use the one in Blue Book. But it's the first time our school has administered this. I don't know. It can't hurt for you to maybe have a calculator just in case. They don't want anything with a full QWERTY keyboard, and they don't want anything with Wi-Fi. Every other calculator is fine. You'll want a clear water bottle with no label. Snacks, and I recommend fruit. It's different. Fruit sugars, a fruit roll up without any sugar added, a date bar, but nothing with refined sugars added because the ratio of fiber to sugar affects how quickly you absorb the sugar. So if you have something like fruit, you'll have like a more sustained sugar high. Whereas if you have like a Snickers bar, you'll get all hyper, but then you'll bonk about halfway through the exam and you can't afford to do that. So I strongly recommend something with natural sugars. Um, and this is one time when nobody really cares if you look good, but you'll care if you're not comfortable. So I would try to dress comfortably. Um, you can see on my screen what you're going to have. 80 questions for multiple choice in 90 minutes. About half of those are going to be single standalone questions like you usually saw in my class. And about half of those will be set questions where there's like a graph or a chart and then 3 or 4 questions about that. Or maybe there will be like something complicated, one of the big lectures, dissolved oxygen, nitrogen cycle, food web issues, like a big topic, and then 3 or 4 questions that are kind of related to different parts of that. There'll be something that's a little trivial about individual species. There'll be something that's a little bit complicated about some detail that's just alluded to. Um, and then there's going to be 2 sets of questions that are what we call text based. And as soon as you turn the page and you see like a paragraph of reading with a couple of questions after it, I want you to press mark for review and then move on to the next question because you're going to come back to do, let me see, this. You're going to do the text based sets dead last. Like it'll probably take you 20 minutes to answer 6 questions. And that's the most amount of time for the fewest points in the entire exam. So this part you'll do last. The one that refers to like a big passage. Sometimes it's like 2 pages of reading before you get to the questions. Ain't nobody got time for that. Leave those for last. When you take a break in the middle after the multiple choice, I would strongly recommend that you not discuss the test with anybody. Like, it'll be weird. People are going to think you're being a weirdo because they all want to talk about it. There's 20 kids or whatever, 12 kids, 15 kids here. And then everybody else taking the exam is going to be like, oh my God, did you see number 4? It was like a trick question. And you should just ignore them and be like, la, la, la. I don't want to talk about it. Talk about Mac Miller if you want, but don't talk about the exam because you don't need to stress yourself out anymore. You can only get stupider. If you start calm and then you stress out, your effective situational intelligence went down. You get dumber. Um, Cops stress you out to make you make a mistake. Everybody knows that. So don't do the work for the exam. Like, don't stress yourself out because you're going to do worse. So whatever has already happened, already happened. Like if you got number 4 wrong, my condolences, but let's not stress out right now. You can talk about number 4 after the exam, but not during the break. Tell everybody around you, yo, don't talk to me about this. We tell a lot of our kids who race mountain bikes, don't look at your results along the way because all it can do is mess with you. You want to like be fully ready to be completely present for the next obstacle. So do not discuss the exam during the break. Do whatever you got to do to avoid discussing the exam during the break. When you come back, there's 3 free response questions. You can see they're on my screen here. You'll have 1 experimental design, one problem and solution based on math, and 1 problem and solution without any math. And I want everybody to do something very specific. I don't know if I can write on my shared screen. Let me see if I can try this. Bear with me, I'm 1,000 years old. Okay. The first thing you're going to do is the math part of the math question. That's step number 1. Because that's the fewest points per minute of effort. You can get the most, sorry, the fewest minutes per point. Yeah. So you can get the most points in the quickest amount of time if you start with the math. Plus, your brain has to switch sides. And every time you do that, you lose some details. So you want to start on the math side and then go to the word side. So you're going to do the math part first, and maybe you got it right, and maybe you didn't, but you're going to move on after the math to the rest of that topic. You already know what they're asking about, so you're going to do this second. Then third, You're going to take whichever of these is shortest. Sometimes the experimental design one is just like a little blip, and the final question is really long. Do the experimental design one. Sometimes it's the other way around, where there's like a whole bunch of crap for the experimental design and then like a really short one after that. Whatever you do, sorry, whatever the case, you will always do the math first, then the rest of that question, then whichever question is shortest, and then you'll move on to the remaining um, third question. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, awesome. On the multiple choice, I need everybody to accept something right now. Like, this is stressing you out. It's a lot to expect. I'm just trying to let you be ready for tomorrow. I need everybody to accept that you're not going to know stuff. Like, 100% guaranteed, you're not going to know stuff. And you're not going to know um, probably a few things, and that's okay. First of all, there's like 3 or 4 trial questions every year, which are usually questions that they just wrote and they just want to see, does this question help me identify the smartest students versus the weakest students? Or is this a question that is the same for everyone? They're just trying to evaluate the question. A lot of times they're trying something new. They're like, hey, have kids heard this thing before? And so if you see something that's like kind of out of left field, for all you know, it's not even graded. Um, Second of all, there's always some regional questions. So they're going to ask you about a bird in Oklahoma or a tree that lives in New York or the alligators of Florida. And like, you don't know. It's like, well, I don't know about that. That's something that's not. They asked a question a couple years ago about like diseases that are spread by spare tires on the side of the road. Everybody in the South knows that if you have old tires, they hold water, and those puddles of water breed mosquitoes, and mosquitoes are a vector for disease. But kids in California don't know that crap. We don't have rain in Santa Barbara. That's okay. There's going to be regional questions that favor you, and then the kids in Oklahoma, New York, and Florida are going to get screwed. So just accept that some of these questions you're not going to see. Plus, you guys, there's an extremely high likelihood that I didn't know something, knew it, but decided not to teach you. We ran out of time. That day got canceled. There was a fire drill, and I decided to skip it. Um, like maybe I didn't teach it to you. And by the way, like I'm not like trying to pick on anybody, but everybody has a bad day. So maybe I taught it and you just didn't learn it. My kids will come up and be like, dude, you never taught us this. And I'm like, no, dummy, that's like study goal number 26. And then like, maybe you just had a bad day. Who knows? Whatever the case, um, sorry, I gotta find the thing to clear this. Um, you have to accept that you're not going to know some stuff. And it doesn't really matter that you don't know some stuff. Like everybody's so stressed out about like having a 4.0 that you keep thinking that perfection's important, but not on the AP exam. Like if you get 20 questions wrong tomorrow, you could still have a 5. 5 or 10, you're like a strong contender. 5 or 10, you could probably like skip half of a free response and still have a 5. Um, so just let it go. You're not going to know some, you're not going to get them all. It's okay. It's okay. It's better than stressing out. Another really important thing about the multiple choices, you have to skip around. Like, there's a variety of reasons why that's better. It keeps your stress level down. It's the most efficient way to use your time. Once you get stumped, you can't really find new information. So you don't want to let yourself reach the point of being stumped. And they make it super easy for you. There's a thing that says mark for review. And then at the end of the exam, you can see a list of all the questions and it'll tell you which questions you answered and which ones you left blank and which ones you were going to go back and look at. So just use that, and I want you to go like a full pass through all 80 questions and answer like just the easy ones. It would probably take you about 15 minutes and you would have like more than a quarter, maybe even one half of the questions done in that first lightning round. That's definitely the right strategy. For one thing, you haven't stumped yourself and you haven't wasted time with like a bunch of reading, just skip it. Math that you don't remember how to do, just skip it. Words that you don't recognize, I'll come back later. And just pick up the easy ones. While you're loose and like relaxed, your brain will be nimble and you'll just like pow, 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 just start like racking up the points. Ding, 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 ding. You're like getting higher, higher, higher. Here we go, pass. And then you look at your watch and you're like, okay, now I have 1 hour left, but only a smaller number of questions. So you go back for the ones that are going to take work, like you got to read a lot or you have to like work out something or like use your scratch paper. And then like on the final pass, that's the one where you're like, I don't know, I don't know. Um, Keep an eye on the clock. Whatever you do, never leave a blank. Like always guess. There's no guess penalty. By the way, the guest penalty would have worked in your favor when we had a guest penalty, but now we don't. So just to clarify the policy for you, there is no guest penalty. So when you're down to a few minutes, just guess. I don't recommend blind guessing if you can at least look at the question for like a minute, 30 seconds, 5 seconds. If you can like look at it, your subconscious will help you choose. So you'll think like you're guessing, but in the back of your brain, there's a little part going, it's B, dummy, it's B. So you're like, I don't know, I guess B. That's why you never second guess. Once you've guessed, leave it. Um, you're about 7 to 20 times better on your first guess than on subsequent guesses when you second guess. So never second guess. Once you've guessed, it's done. Don't come back. Be careful that multiple choice questions will have a right answer and then another one that's even more right. It sucks, but it's true. Um, and be really careful about stress. Um, this is kind of like a bad trip. Like you just gotta write it out, keep your head game, like breathe, don't don't get carried away, don't do anything stupid, don't like chew on your pencil, don't like punch yourself, like just stay calm. Because the more you get stressed out, the stupider you get. So just expect you're not going to know some. It's okay. Expect that you're going to guess. Move on. And just try to stay chill. Ninja mode. You know, you're going to land most of your punches. Other guy's going to land a few punches. Roll with it. Keep going. Um, in the FRQs, like I told you, math first, rest of the math question, shortest one next, and finally the longest one. Always outline. Um, the part of your brain that looks for information is on the other side from the part that makes sentences. So once you start writing your sentences, you don't really remember what you were trying to say anymore. And I see it all the time. Kids write beautiful, elegant, colorful language that's all flowing and everything. And that's what you're supposed to do in English, but not on a science exam. You've seen the key. On a science exam, you're supposed to like say the word or describe the thing or like do the deed, what that the question was asking you to do. So, be really careful. Outline before you write. Parts are often separate. So if you don't know A, B, C, don't give up. Keep looking at D. If you don't know D, let's see what E is. If you don't know E, maybe you can answer F, but they're often separate. So if you don't know these, it doesn't mean that you won't know those. Keep going all the way down. Always show your work. Even on this digital thing, you have to show your work and like double check your units. Like when you finish writing a thing, go back and look at the question and go like, is this the units that they were asking me for? Um, like I told you before, be careful of generic latitudes. Try to say something specific that you could measure. You never need words. There's never a point for saying a word, ever. It's not on this exam. No such thing. There are kids that have different language development than you do. It would be unethical to grade people on a word. So we grade them on their concepts. And if you don't know what it's called, you just say it's that cardboard box that holds the eggs. And you don't have to say egg box. You just describe it and you're okay. Um, Everything's graded on a 10-point scale. So you gotta probably respond with like 10 bits, like 10 things. And you can have like a long sentence with a couple commas, but it's like 10 parts. It's always 10 parts. Try to find them. It'll be like describe two, what's a thing, describe and explain, and then like each of those is a point. Um, if you're going to use an abbreviation, you have to explain it, like Federal Bureau of Investigation, parentheses FBI, and then from then on you can use FBI. Um, I'll caution you that you'll need to stick to stuff you've heard in the class. They can only ask you questions that appear in all the textbooks, and they're not looking for cultural critique or like people who hate corporations or like it's not a job interview for like Greenpeace or something. So there's going to be a question that's like, why is pesticide good? And another question that's like, what's the big benefit of gasoline? And like, it's not a trick question. Like they're asking for like stuff that isn't like hippie answers. It's not like job interview for Patagonia or something. I don't know. They will trick you with units in math. Always happens. They always trick people with units in math. Um, any number that you write is going to be an actual real number. Like if they tell you to calculate the price of Spindrift, it'll be based on the price of Spindrift. So the numbers should be reasonable. The price for a car, it'll be 20 to $70,000 because that's the price of a car. It's not going to be $48 million or 14 cents or something. That's definitely not a reasonable price for a car. Um, the math is usually simple. Like you've seen me do it, and like manipulating the words into math functions can be the challenge, but the math itself is like 2 times 4 times 10 divided by 4. And it's like, oh, that kind of canceled out. The answer is 20. Um, be careful if they ask about cost and benefit, there's always a type. So social, ecological, economic, something. Um, if they're asking for many things, always use your best one at the beginning. Like name 3 ways to improve water quality. Always use your best one first. And be careful that you don't say 2 things that are very similar. If they say like how do you save water and you say like a more efficient shower and a more efficient shower head and a more efficient faucet and a more efficient toilet, like those are 3 examples, but their key might have just said efficient appliances and you just said the same thing 3 times. So when they ask for multiple things, try to make them different. By the way, if we run out of time, I have one more slide. So if we run out of time, come back. I'll reset in 1 minute. Um, the most important thing that you can do tonight is sleep early. So if you're a 10 o'clock sleeper, you should probably get to bed pretty soon here. And if you sleep at 1 a.m., I'd like you to try 11:30 tonight. Um, Sleep like an hour and a half early if you can. And then tomorrow, wake up like 20 minutes early. So you're not like starting the day in a rush. If this is your normal sleep pattern, I want you to start way earlier and then end a little earlier. So you sleep more, but also have a longer morning routine. It's very important. Wear comfortable clothes. Do not change your caffeine. Like if you don't drink coffee, don't experiment with espresso tomorrow. I'm serious. Kids think that like caffeine will somehow super boost and like start like sucking down like 15 Red Bulls or whatever. Like don't do that. bad call. Your normal amount of caffeine. Kind of terrible, by the way. If you're like 2 Celsius for breakfast, you got to do that tomorrow. It's a terrible habit, but you just can't change that on the day of the exam. Um, there's a lot of science that says if you can break a sweat when you're walking into the exam, you'll do better. Something about oxygen flow and brain activity and breathing and your blood rate or whatever. So like if you're supposed to check in at 12:30 tomorrow, 12:15 like go do jumping jacks or like run a lap around the track and run up the hill and then go to the old gym or whatever. Um, but you do need that like little bit of breaking a sweat. And if your mommy and daddy allow it, I would recommend that you skip the rest of the school day. Um, Eat a good breakfast, eat lunch before you go in there, take a poop before you go in there so you're not distracted. Take fruit, clear bottle. Um, you don't need to like cram, doesn't help. If you stay awake tonight trying to like put more stuff in your brain, it's not going to stick. You'll just be stupider tomorrow. There's science for that. It's not an opinion. I crammed my whole life. I only learned about the downsides of cramming in grad school. Don't do it. Um, okay. As you can see on my screen, this is our last screen. You'll go to the old gym, used to be called the girls' gym back in the day, for standard time. And if you have extra time, you go to the alumni room. I'm not sure if there are additional rooms for different accommodations. This is a big test. Um, they tell everybody to check in at 12:45, but this is a big test. So you might want to check in at like 12:30, 40, maybe not 12:45, like be there early, why not? Um, my timer says we have 3 minutes. How can I help you?
I got a question.
Hit it, Calvin.
What kind of calculator can I bring? Like, I got a fancy like graphing calculator I bought for the stats test. Like, am
Hit
I
it.
allowed to use like a fancy one?
Does it have a QWERTY keyboard?
It has like I can click a button and the numbers kind of turn into letters, like on an old cell phone.
I think that's okay.
Okay. All right, nice. Thank you.
What else? By the way, I'm not certain that you'll need it. I believe that the Blue Book app includes a calculator, but better safe than sorry. What else? My screen says I have 2 minutes. My man cave is hot.
I got another one, guys.
Do it.
When you mean like outline a question for the free response, like that means like on my scratch paper, like note down what I want to say.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And think about the specific parts of your answer. If they ask you about wildfire, then in your outline, you would say mineralize, temperature, size, fuel, like all the words that are kind of relevant. So, like, you've got the palette of terms that you know are going to be required for all the parts of that answer. And then when you start to make them into sentence, you can just like cross them off and be like, okay, I was supposed to talk about soil. I was supposed to talk